G9C got the fucking juice.
Silk is the new gold.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT. Breaking news going on in the football world today. All-star wide receiver, superstar DeVante Adams has requested out of Las Vegas. He is demanding a trade from the Raiders. Where is he going to go? That's what we're going to be discussing on this episode. We're going to be breaking down how we got to this situation, DeVante Adams requesting out of Las Vegas, and what team is the best fit for him to get traded to. Also, we got to discuss the large and major implications on Florida going into their home game this week against UCF. If Florida loses this game, this could be absolutely devastating for their brand, the prestige of what it means to put on that Gators uniform. The Kansas City Chiefs, their offense is lacking the necessary firepower required in order for them to three-peat. I don't think they're going to go that far this year. It is really early to be making these bold claims, but Patrick Mahomes isn't playing good football. He took out the Chiefs' best receiver as well. And also, when it comes to quarterback play, how about Geno Smith? A lot of Seahawks fans are making it seem like he's the big reason why they can't go far, why he's holding the franchise back. But after how he played last night against the Detroit Lions, I don't think Geno Smith is the problem. We got some college football games to break down as well. We got Texas A&M hosting Mizzou, Tennessee going on the road to take on the Razorbacks. Is Clemson a threat to Miami's possibility of being able to win the ACC title? What I'm trying to say is Clemson a threat to Miami's ACC championship hopes? We got a lot to break down on this episode of JT Sports Live. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to Marshall Jenkins. Shout out to Speaking the Truth TV. Shout out to Buckeye DK. Wherever you're watching, YouTube, X, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we go live and drop new content. You can listen to this episode on all podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. If you enjoy, give us a 5-star review. Giving us a 5-star review is the equivalent to donating $1,000 to the platform. We greatly appreciate it. Helps us out a lot. So if you listen to podcasts, go ahead, check out the JT Sports Podcast on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow us on Instagram at JT Sports _ and on X at JT Sports _ And let's dive into it, man. We got breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Superstar wide receiver DeVante Adams has officially requested out of Las Vegas. You know, this situation is not surprising because the Raiders organization, let's just be honest about this, they failed DeVante Adams. When he wanted out of Green Bay, he wanted to play for the Raiders because he wanted to play with Derek Carr, who was the same quarterback that he spent his college days with at Fresno State, and he had a really great relationship with Derek Carr. So when they kicked Derek Carr to the curb, they said that he wasn't good enough, and they replaced him with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then eventually Aiden O'Connell, and now Gardner Minshew. That made DeVante Adams frustrated because it's like, all right, I came here to play with my best friend, Derek Carr. He's no longer here. You're giving me these garbage quarterbacks that you're replacing him with. How do you expect me to be satisfied playing with mediocre quarterback play when all I've known for the majority of my career is playing with greatness? I played the majority of my playing years with prime Aaron Rodgers, the bad man. And then I go from playing with him, an all-time great, to playing with Derek Carr, which I had no problem with. He's no Aaron Rodgers, but I got a good relationship with him. He's one of my best friends, and I love Derek Carr as a person. So I enjoyed my first season playing for this organization. Just for them to ruin it by getting rid of Derek Carr, and now you got to force me to be satisfied with below-average quarterback play. If you watch the Netflix docuseries, Receiver, that followed DeVante Adams and the rest of that class throughout last season, he was the most unhappiest receiver on that show. He was constantly frustrated with the hospital balls that Aiden O'Connell was throwing to him. He straight up said that I've never been hit this many times in my career, ever. That shows you his frustrations that he had with the current quarterback situation that the Raiders gave him to deal with. And it was already known that going into the offseason, the Raiders' number one priority was to address the quarterback position, and they were unable to get the guy that they truly wanted, that being Jaden Daniels. He went second overall to the Commanders. Then they wanted Michael Penix. Of course, he got snapped up by the Atlanta Falcons. So you were stuck to just go with the best player available and just make do with the two quarterbacks you currently have, and Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And with how the quarterback play has been for the Raiders so far this season, it's no surprise why DeVante Adams wants out. He wants to win. This is not a young player in his early 20s. This is somebody who's in the tail end of his career that's getting ready to hang it up, and he wants to go out on top. And the Raiders are not giving him the opportunity to do so. They are not serious about winning football games down there in Vegas with the fact that they have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as their two best options at quarterback. I would be upset too. I would be wanting to get out too. Now, of course, DeVante Adams, you know, like, he didn't play last week, which is understandable. He had a shoulder injury, even though he looked pretty healthy to me. And before last week, after that embarrassing loss the Raiders suffered to the Panthers, Antonio Pierce in his post-game press conference said that There were guys during that game that made business decisions, and the Raiders were going to be forced to have to make business decisions of their own. And I guess this situation is that business decision that Antonio Pierce was alluding to a few weeks ago. You obviously may not be able to get a first-round pick for DeVante Adams, but you definitely can get a second rounder and maybe a couple of other draft picks, maybe a second package with the fourth, the fifth rounder would do the job. You're not going to get a first rounder for DeVante just because of his age, his contract, and the fact that you're trying to trade him in the middle of the season. So the most you're going to get for him, and what reports are saying, is that a second round pick would do the job. For the Raiders, this was a really disappointing situation that you put DeVante Adams in. This dude wanted to come back to an area that he was familiar with. He wanted to play with his best friend, and instead, you just made it a complete nightmare for him. You giving him these randos at quarterback. You make these changes with the head coach. You know, he came to play for Josh McDaniels. It didn't work out, and he ends up having to play for Antonio Pierce. This was not the situation that DeVante Adams was expecting when he got traded to this franchise. And the fact that he's requesting a trade coming from somebody that's been pretty unproblematic for the entirety of his career. He never really gets into anything off the field. He's not a locker room distraction. He's a high character guy. With him wanting out, it shows how dysfunctional the Raiders front office is. They were unable to appease him. They couldn't do right by him. And we've been going through this DeVante Adams trade saga for over the last 2 years. Last year, we thought he was going to get traded. He had a little interview that he did with a magazine that kind of threw a lot of people off. Deshaun Jackson came out and said that, DeVante Adams was unsatisfied with his situation, and DeVante came at him a little bit one-sided, saying how, he was just talking out of the side of his mouth, just making up things. Well, it looks like Deshaun Jackson was right. So where's the apology, DeVante Adams? For all of the Raiders fans that were in denial about how unsatisfied DeVante Adams has been these last couple of weeks, there's an old saying that goes, where there's smoke, there's fire. You just don't have these random trade rumors coming out if there isn't a little bit of truth to the situation. And now we finally got the truth revealed to us that for these last 2 seasons, ever since they got rid of Derek Carr, DeVante was never truly satisfied with this situation. And I knew that DeVante Adams probably was going to end up getting traded when he made the comment on Shannon Sharp's podcast joking about getting Tom Brady. Despite how old he is, he can still sling that rock. Like, behind every joke, there's a little bit of truth to it. And DeVante Adams, if you have listened or consumed any media when he's been giving interviews and whatnot, he's been throwing some tidbits about how he's unsatisfied with the current situation in Las Vegas. It's not surprising that DeVante Adams wants out, and this is a sign to how dysfunctional the Raiders franchise is and how they've been over the last 2 decades. So the next question is this. With DeVante Adams wanting out of Las Vegas, where's his next destination? Everybody's saying the New York Jets, linking back up with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he goes to the 49ers. The Raiders swap receivers. They get Brandon Ayuk. The 49ers get DeVante Adams. But me personally, in my opinion, I really believe the best spot for DeVante Adams is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, everybody loves Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is the most respected head coach in the NFL among current players. He allows players to be themselves. He allows them to flourish, and he normally gets the best out of guys nearing the tail end of their career. Look how high of a level Cam Hayward has been playing at these last couple of years. The Steelers are one of those franchises that they get older players and they're able to squeeze a lot of juice out of them before they retire. And Justin Fields, he's starting to have a breakout season. He's starting to look like a franchise quarterback. He needs another weapon. Imagine if Justin Fields has the ability to throw to George Pickens, one of the best deep ball receivers in the league, and DeVante Adams lining up on the opposite side of him. The Steelers, it's been publicly known that they were in on trying to acquire Brandon Ayuk, but the 49ers didn't go through with the trade. Well, a few weeks ago, it said that the Steelers were still looking over the wide receiver market, and they want to make a move to acquire and upgrade their wide receiver position right now, because that's the biggest Achilles heel with this offense. Outside of George Pickens, you don't have another reliable wide receiver in this offense. You get DeVante Adams, it's going to help elevate Justin Fields. Now, you're going to have no choice but to just open that playbook up for Justin and let him sling that football all over the field. You know, Justin Fields, to play as good as what he has these first couple of games, only having Pickens being the only option, think about how getting DeVante Adams will take Justin Fields' career to the next level. You'll go from somebody who was cast aside, scapegoated in Chicago, comes to Pittsburgh, resurrects his career, and all of a sudden, he has the potential to become the answer for the Steelers' long-term question, which is, are the Steelers ever going to find another franchise quarterback since Big Ben retired? You know, that's what we've been asking every single season as Steeler fans, and now that answer can finally come to fruition if the Steelers can give Justin Fields another true number one wide receiver. And you can do that by getting Davante Adams. He's out there for the taking. The trade isn't going to be that complicated to make. It doesn't matter the salary that he's getting, because you are willing to make Brandon Ayuk one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL. So if you are willing to spend that money on Brandon Ayuk, you should have no problem investing that same amount of financial capital into Davante Adams. Although he is on the tail end of 30, he still has about 2-3 high-level years left of good football. He's a Hall of Fame caliber player. These types of players regress at a slower rate than your average players do at the position. And if you bring Davante Adams into this offense with George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, you're going to help elevate and speed up Justin Fields' growth and development. The Steelers must trade for Davante Adams right now. Amar Khan, do your magic, man. You had a really good offseason. You improved the offensive line. You solved the Steelers' quarterback woes. Now you just have to put the bow on a nice Christmas present and get Davante Adams to Pittsburgh. Davante Adams to the Pittsburgh Steelers is the best place for him to end his career. Why would you want to go and play for the New York Jets? And that's another thing I want to talk about. With Davante Adams wanting out of Las Vegas, him going to the New York Jets, linking up with Aaron Rodgers is a really bad decision. He might as well just go play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you actually are trying to win before you retire, Pittsburgh gives you the best chance to do that, because the New York Jets, they aren't serious about football down there. Aaron Rodgers is running that operation. Nathaniel Hackett is a trash offensive coordinator, doesn't have any innovative play calling. He already can't utilize the personnel that he has on that team already. He's struggling to get the most out of Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. They still can't protect Aaron Rodgers. With how bad the coaching is with the New York Jets, do you really believe they give Davante Adams the best shot to retire with the ring? Come on, man. If Davante Adams is truly serious about wanting to win before he hangs up the cleats, he would want to get traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the only right place for Davante Adams if he wants to go out on top as a champion, because he is the missing piece to the Steelers being able to make a legitimate Super Bowl run. You got a franchise quarterback now in Justin Fields. You improved the offensive line. You already got a really good number one in George Pickens. Now you pair him up with Davante Adams. This is going to be one of the most potent offenses in the NFL if this trade falls through with the Steelers acquiring Davante Adams. Going to the New York Jets is just a waste of time, and it's a waste to what is going to be a Hall of Fame career. The New York Jets have one of the worst coaching staffs in the NFL. Robert Saleh is 4 seasons in, and he's yet to produce a winning season. Mike Tomlin's been winning with backup quarterbacks for the last 3-4 years. There's no excuses for Robert Saleh. The dude just isn't a good head coach. That's why they were on their knees sucking up to Aaron Rodgers to get him to want to play for the New York Jets. If Davante Adams is serious about trying to retire a winner like he claims to be, he will want to get traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a perfect fit, the perfect organization, the perfect situation for Adams to end his career. Justin Fields is one of the most accurate deep ball throwers in the league. He has a career-high completion percentage right now. With how well Justin Fields is throwing that football, Davante Adams could once again have another all-pro season if he ends up playing in the black and gold. The New York Jets are not the best situation for Davante Adams. It's obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers, and if you say otherwise, you're just a biased New York Jets fan. The Jets are dysfunctional, and they only are ran by Aaron Rodgers and his little cronies who don't know what the hell they're doing. The Jets just lost to a team that had only -7 passing yards at halftime. What about that situation screams Davante Adams has a shot at being able to win? The Jets won't even win their division this year. You can't beat the Broncos team with the rookie quarterback. What makes you think that they're going to be able to top the Buffalo Bills for the AFC East title this year? The furthest that the New York Jets are going is to the wild card round, and then right after that, they're getting sent straight home on a first-class ticket to Cancun. If you enjoy spending your Januaries, Davante Adams, watching the playoffs from home, the Jets are a perfect situation for you. But if you enjoy actually playing meaningful football in January and early February, the black and gold is the only destination that you need to be asking the Raiders to send you off to. The Steelers are going to make sure that you retire a champion. You are the missing piece to the Steelers' offense, Davante Adams. The New York Jets is a no-go. Pittsburgh is the only right place for you, my friend. The only right place for you. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to Fierce Raider 88. Shout out to M Spark. Shout out to MDT TV. Shout out to Speaking the Truth TV. We got shout out to Unruly TV. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in to the live stream. If you're listening on YouTube, X, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we go live and when we drop new content. If you're on X, give us a follow, retweet the stream. And for all of my podcasting listeners that are listening to this after the fact, go ahead, give us a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's keep moving on. So, Patrick Mahomes is struggling this year. He's thrown an interception in every game against the Chargers. One of the interceptions that he threw costed him injuring his best receiver, Rashee Rice. He's now out for the season with the alleged ACL injury. And I find it funny how everybody loves to criticize Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar when they have bad games, but nobody wants to criticize Patrick Mahomes. Look, I understand Patrick Mahomes is a Super Bowl champion, but if he's playing bad, we need to hold him to the same standard, hold and have the same accountability for him having bad games as we do for Josh, Lamar, and Joe Burrow. Like Mahomes is playing the worst football of his career. And with the lack of talent that the Chiefs have at wide receiver, Marquise Brown, Rashee Rice, they're out for this season. The only weapons that you have left is old man Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy. That is not enough firepower if the Chiefs are going to be able to three-peat this year. And yes, I know that we said the same thing about this team last year, and they proved us all wrong, but the AFC is way too stacked this year for Kansas City to skate by the way they did last season. You got Houston now. With that boy CJ Stroud, they're going to have a elite offense, elite defense. You got to be able to score more than 20 points if you want to knock off Houston in the playoffs. This is not going to be an easy road to the Super Bowl that Mahomes had last season. The AFC is as tough as it's ever been. Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, they got a great chance to knock off the Chiefs again if they see them in the postseason. I doubt that Lamar Jackson is going to allow himself to lose to Patrick Mahomes again in the playoffs. Lamar is going to show up in that game. That Ravens team is going to be motivated, and they're going to find a way to beat KC if they got to play him in the postseason. Buffalo has a good chance to knock off the Chiefs. They got a great pass rush. The Chiefs' offensive line has not been that good. Somebody in the AFC is going to knock this team off because you can't continue to sustain this level of success when you're not playing at your full potential. The Kansas City Chiefs is one thing to find a way to win in the regular season, but winning in the playoffs requires you to play a different level of football that I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to just flip that switch and do this season like they did last year's playoffs, man. This is the most vulnerable that we've seen the Chiefs so far throughout the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era. Nobody in the media wants to hold Patrick Mahomes accountable, but when Brady was struggling, the only dude who had enough balls to call him out on his lackluster play was Max Kellerman. And although he was wrong about the cliff, he was acknowledging that Tom Brady was not the same quarterback at that time that we've been accustomed to seeing out of him up to that point. And the same thing can be said about Patrick Mahomes this season. He took out his best receiver after a god-awful interception, and nobody is talking about it. Hold Patrick Mahomes accountable. If you're going to ride his coattails and jack him off about how great he is, you gotta have the same energy when he's not playing good football. With how much the Chiefs' offense has been struggling this year, eventually there is going to be a team this year that can play a good enough game in the fourth quarter where they can outlast when Mahomes and the Chiefs start making their fourth quarter comebacks. Kansas City, for as good as what that defense is, when you got an offense that's inefficient and struggles to sustain drives and they don't have the level of explosiveness that they used to have early during the Mahomes, Andy Reid regime, this is a recipe for them to not make it to the Super Bowl this year. Everybody just likes to crown Kansas City as the Super Bowl champions every single year. Like this team just has this weird force field of invincibility around them that doesn't allow them to lose in the playoffs. The last time I checked, Joe Burrow sent the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes packing in the AFC Championship a few years ago. Tom Brady beat Patrick Mahomes twice, once in the Super Bowl and once in the playoff game. We got to stop acting like the Chiefs are just so unbeatable and they're incapable of being able to be stopped in the playoffs. This team is not that good this year. You're not always what your record says you are. You haven't really played any great teams up to this point this year outside of the Baltimore Ravens, which you got really lucky to win that game. You were literally a shoe size small from losing that game. If Isaiah Likely had some smaller feet, you would have lost that game. Kansas City is not playing their best football right now. And this early into the season, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. But with with so much talent being out for KC, this is going to be the season that they fall short of three-peating. I'm not saying that this is the end of the Chiefs dynasty. I'm not saying that Mahomes is about to fall off. All I'm telling you is that Kansas City is not going to be hoisting that Lombardi trophy this year. They are not. Tom Brady and the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl every year that he played. The way people talk about Brady's dominance in the NFL, you would have thought that this dude is the Bill Russell of the NFL. He got like 12, 13 Super Bowls. Tom Brady has had some seasons when he didn't make it back to the Super Bowl. Come on, we act like Brady won it all every single year. Mahomes hasn't won it all every single year. And with how vulnerable this Chiefs team looks, there is plenty teams in this conference that are capable of sending this team home. This is not a good Chiefs team that we're watching this year. You can call me a hater all you want to, but there's been a lot of games that I've watched out of the Chiefs these last couple of years when you have some questionable calls that go their way. You got some bad decision making on some coaching staffs, like the Ravens only wanting to run the football of their running backs 5 times. These teams are not going to keep allowing themselves to make the same mistakes against Kansas City. Eventually, there's going to be a quarterback with a head coach that can knock this team off. There are plenty of quarterbacks that are not too far away from how good Mahomes is as a talent. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, the gap between those 3 guys and Patrick Mahomes is really not that big. And all of those guys are more than able to send this dude packing in the postseason. Let's just stop trying to anoint Kansas City the Super Bowl champions every single year just because it's the Chiefs. They haven't won a Super Bowl every single year. You know, they have gotten sent home a few times. Joe Burrow did it once. And you mean to tell me that Josh Allen, Lamar, and the rest of the league is unable to get it done as well? Come on, man. Come on. This is going to be the year that the Chiefs do not win it all. And I'm willing to bet some money on it. If you are willing to bet that Kansas City's going to win the Super Bowl, please DM me on Instagram at JTSports_, on X at JTSports__. We can get a little bet going because I don't see a team that right now has enough firepower to three-peat. I don't. So for the last couple of years, Seahawks fans have been blaming Geno Smith for all of their shortcomings. Geno Smith apparently is the reason why the Seahawks have been unable to have more success these last couple of years. But last night when I watched that Monday night game between them and the Detroit Lions, I didn't look at Geno Smith's performance in that game and say, yeah, like, Seahawks fans are right about this dude. He's the problem. If anything, I had the complete opposite opinion. I was looking at Geno Smith and asking myself, why the hell are Seahawks fans always blaming all of their problems on Geno? Because Geno's out there doing this thing. He was running around, extending plays, picking up yards with his legs. I never knew that Geno Smith had this kind of athleticism. I always view Geno Smith as a really good pocket passer, throws a really nice deep ball with a really good arm, but I didn't think that he was athletic enough to buy time for guys to get open, being able to improvise. You Seattle Seahawks fans are wrong about Geno Smith. This dude is a really solid quarterback. Is he an elite quarterback? No, he's no Lamar. He's no Josh Allen or Joe Burrow, but he is a top 15 quarterback. I would take Geno Smith over a healthy Tua. I definitely would take him over Baker Mayfield and Jalen Hurts right now. Geno Smith is a better quarterback than what people want to give him credit for. But since he can't do the same things that Lamar and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes can do, you know, everybody got to try to make it seem like the Seahawks got to upgrade at quarterback. Geno is not the problem. The biggest issue with Seattle is that you can't give the brother any time to throw the damn football. He's running for his life back there, man. Like, the last time the Seahawks had a lead offensive line, I was in 7th grade. I was, 14? 13 years old the last time I remember Seattle having some good offensive line play. I am 22 years old now, people. It's been a decade since the Seahawks have played at an elite level on the offensive line. Every single season consistently for well over a decade, they've been throwing out some garbage on the O-line. And I keep telling myself before the start of every NFL season that the Seahawks are going to get that position right. Because how can you struggle at one position continuously year after year for damn near a decade? And they still don't have the offensive line right, man. This was the same problem that held back Russell Wilson. He didn't have no good offensive line play neither. So the same thing that somewhat hindered Russell Wilson for winning another Super Bowl, it's the same thing that's hindering Geno Smith from being able to have more success as the Seahawks starting quarterback. Make this make sense to me, Seahawks fans, because I want to know, who's the bigger problem? The fact that this offensive line can't protect the soul, or Geno Smith? Because the problem to me looks like it's that offensive line. How about that defense? Look, I love me some Mike Macdonald. He's viewed as the Sean McVay of defensive coaches, but I don't care how many players you got out. You allowed the Detroit Lions to drop 42 on you. Jared Goff went a perfect 18 of 18. If the guys that you are missing on defense are this impactful to where when they're out, the quarterbacks that go against you complete 100% of their passes, these guys got to be Lawrence Taylor kind of great. For Mike Macdonald to be a defensive-minded coach, I expect more out of the Seahawks defense. That was the main reason why a lot of Seahawks fans were excited about this hire, because Pete Carroll, he was a defensive-minded coach, but his defenses haven't been good the last decade. Same thing with the offensive line. So the two biggest problems in Seattle have been prevalent for well over a decade. The defense not being good and not having a capable offensive line, but yet everybody wants to play the blame game with Geno Smith. Geno Smith is a fine quarterback. The Raiders would love to have Geno. The Panthers would love to have Geno. Geno Smith has a lot of good football left in the tank. Now, if you want to go ahead and draft a younger quarterback and develop him for a year or two behind Geno, go ahead. I salute that. That's a good decision. But we got to stop acting like Geno Smith is holding back the Seahawks. If anything, Seattle's holding back Geno Smith. Imagine how good Geno Smith could be if he had a good offensive line. You feel me? Like, Seahawks fans, I love you guys, but y'all are wrong when it comes to Geno Smith. This dude is not the problem. Yeah, he may throw a couple of boneheaded interceptions. He may have a few off games, but it's hard to have top 15 quarterback play in this league. It really is. You can win with Geno Smith if you improve that offensive line and that defense can have somewhat of a damn pulse. Stop blaming all of your shortcomings on Geno Smith. He is not the problem. He's far from it. Fix that offensive line, fix that defense, then we can start talking about some replacements for Geno Smith, because it doesn't matter if you get a better quarterback, because you're still going to have the same issues. Offensive line still going to be garbage, and the defense still is going to be a no-show. Now, before we move on to some college football, I got one more take I got to get off my chest, man. One of the biggest surprises in the league this year to me right now is how bad the Philadelphia Eagles defense is performing. This franchise has invested their last 4 first-round picks in the draft into the defensive side of the football. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith. You drafted Quinyon Mitchell this past year in the first round at cornerback, but yet this defense still continues to be the NFL's biggest, most underperforming unit in the league. For all of the talent that the Eagles have on that side of the football, with how much money Vic Fangio's being paid, the highest defensive coordinator in the NFL, or the highest paid defensive coordinator in the NFL, you expect more out of this defense. You know, like, I'm really shocked at how bad the Philadelphia Eagles defense is this year. This is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. You're 23rd in points per game allowed. You're 29th and yards per game allowed. You're struggling to stop the run. You're struggling to get pressure after the quarterback, despite all of the talent that you have on the defensive line. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith. You paid a lot of money in free agency to Bryce Huff, who was supposed to be an upgrade from Hassan Reddick, and none of those moves are really working out because you're still struggling to generate consistent pressure on the quarterback. Baker Mayfield last week absolutely cooked your defense. He was baking up that defense. And for Vic Fangio to be the highest paid defensive coordinator in the NFL, it's an absolute travesty that this defense is this bad. The main reason why Philadelphia fell apart in the second half of last season after they started out 2-1 was because Nick Sirianni made bad coordinator hires. The year they went to the Super Bowl in 2022, you had Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen as your coordinators, and both of those dudes are now head coaches, and Nick Sirianni has struggled to find the right replacements for those guys. Vic Fangio is supposed to be one of the best defensive coordinators that the NFL has had for well over a decade. For him to be getting paid this much money and the defense still sucks shows that the Eagles are getting scammed by this dude right now. It makes sense why the Miami Dolphins had no problem allowing this dude to walk out the door, because for you to have all this talent and for this defense to continue to struggle and look this bad is inexcusable. You have invested 4 straight first-round picks on the defensive side of the football, but none of those guys are really having a big impact. Jalen Carter, you hear his name every once in a while, but he doesn't play with the level of intensity that you expect from a defensive tackle that you invest the top 10 pick into. Jordan Davis is nothing more but an above-average run stopper. He struggles with his conditioning. He can't play a lot of snaps. And you really don't have a dominant pass rusher on the edge that can win one-on-one consistently. And your cornerbacks, Quinyon Mitchell, he's been decent, but Darius Slay, look, we all love Darius Slay. But for 2 straight weeks now, he's given up a touchdown. He got cooked by Trey Palmer. Do any of y'all even know who the hell that is? Yeah, I don't either. What about when he gave up that touchdown against Atlanta? When he got cooked by Drake London? This is the same defense that allowed Kirk Cousins to get in the scoring range and only 4 plays on Monday Night Football when they lost that game. The Eagles' defense is underperforming at a big-time level. This is the most disappointing defense in the NFL. If I was to ask you, name me your most talented defenses. I don't want to hear about the coaching or anything else. Just from a pure talent standpoint, name the 5 best defenses in the NFL. The Eagles are going to be on that list. But when it comes to this unit taking the field week after week, they're giving up big plays, and they are underachieving and underperforming relative to the talent that they have on that side of football. It's embarrassing. We know that Jalen Hurts is mid at this point, and with you having all these injuries on offense, you need that defense to be able to bail you out. If you have Bill Belichick coaching the Philadelphia Eagles defense this year, I promise you they will have the best defense in the NFL. You can say all you want to about Bill Belichick not knowing how to draft, not knowing too much about offense, but one thing that Bill Belichick does know is how to put an elite defense on the field. And if you gave Bill Belichick the talent that the Eagles have on that defensive side of the ball, this would be the NFL's best defense right now, because there are a lot of players that aren't developing and they aren't being properly utilized to their talent. You signed Devin White in free agency. You got this dude on the bench. You got Eagles reporters harassing this dude every week, asking him, hey, Devin, so how you feel about not being out there starting? How you feel about getting your job took? How you feel about not being able to suit up? Just asking this dude some of the most awful questions you can have to answer if you're a player when he really should be on that field. You mean to tell me that Devin White is worse than any of the other linebackers that the Eagles have put on that football field? Come on, man. Give Devin White a shot to play. At one point, people thought this man was going to be the second coming of Ray Lewis. There is a lot of potential that Devin White still has left in that tank. He can't cover to save a fly, but he can definitely help out that lackluster run defense that's struggling right now. Come on, man. Like, this is embarrassing for the Steelers defense to be this ineffective on defense when you got Vic Fangio calling that side of the football. This dude is a legend. If they had a Hall of Fame for just coordinators, he would be first ballot. This dude's defense revolutionized the NFL. Nearly half the league's defensive coordinators now are heavily influenced based off the kind of defense that Vic Fangio runs. So I expected way more out of this defense than what I've seen so far into this season. If they don't pick this thing up, the Washington Commanders are going to win the NFC East. You can laugh all you want to, but when Jaden Daniels ends up going 40 for 40 against that Eagles pass defense, y'all won't be laughing anymore. Like, the Washington Commanders are legit, and right now, Jaden Daniels looks better than Jalen Hurts. Y'all don't want to talk about it. Y'all don't want to admit it because you're going to say, oh, it's too early into his career. Listen, I go and base my opinions based off a week-to-week basis. And for the first 4 weeks of this season, you can't tell me that Jaden Daniels hasn't been a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts right now. I don't care about the big picture. I don't care if it's only 4 games into Jaden Daniels' career. What do your eyes show you when you watch Jaden Daniels play? I don't see Jalen Hurts completing over 80% of his passes. And you can't use the whole Andrew excuse because Jaden Daniels doesn't have no receiver as good as what DeVante Smith and A.J. Brown is. All he has is Terry McLaurin. Imagine if Jaden Daniels was throwing it to DeVante Smith and A.J. Brown. He may never throw an incompletion in the game. He may complete well over 90% of his passes with those wide receivers. The Eagles are underachieving, mainly because their defense is struggling. Not really going to talk too much more about their offense because that's a subject for a different day. But this defense has to play better. They got way too much talent to be looking this bad. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to Fierce Raider 88. Shout out to Speaking the Truth TV. Shout out to M Spark. Shout out to Video Media One. If this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. Remember that you can find this episode and all of our other ones on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. If you listen to podcasts, stop being stubborn. Go ahead. Give us a 5-star review. Giving us a 5-star review is the equivalent to donating $1,000 to the channel. It helps us out a lot. Go ahead, rate the JT Sports Podcast 5 stars if you enjoy. Now, this is it for the NFL side of this episode. We're going to be switching over to college football. For those of you guys who are new, we're not just the NFL channel. We are a college football channel as well. Like, for everybody that wants to know, that doesn't already know, what exactly is JT Sports? JT Sports is a place for the diehard football fans. If you're like me, you wake up, you live, eat, breathe, and sleep football. You love college football. You love NFL football. Like, football is just your life. This is the right place for you. You know, and if you're somebody that only cares about one of the other, you only care about the NFL, you don't care too much about college football, we got enough NFL content for you to enjoy. Vice versa when it comes to college football, we're covering the draft in depth. We just love football over here. That's why you see so much diversity when it comes to the amount of content that we post. One day we're posting about Kansas City. The next day we're talking about Alabama, Georgia, and the rest of college football. So if you just are a football consumer like me and you just gotta watch football, this is the right place for you. We're talking football 24/7, unbiased, raw takes about the NFL and college football 24/7. Go ahead, subscribe if you haven't already, and give the podcast a 5-star review. All right, now we got UCF versus Florida. This game has massive implications. There isn't a game that has bigger stakes than the one that we're about to see played this week in the Swamp. UCF is entering this game coming off a loss to Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffs. Meanwhile, Florida State is coming off a bye. They got their first win against a Power 4 opponent in Mississippi State, but Billy Napier, we already know the story by now. The dude has the hottest seat in college football, and most of us thought that this dude was going to get his walk-in papers after Florida lost to Texas A&M. Well, he still is the head coach of the Florida Gators. He got a big win against Mississippi State. Okay, you won that game. I'm not going to discredit you because that game you could have easily lost as well if things would have went left for you. You feel me? So for Billy Napier now, this UCF game is must win. This is probably the biggest game of the season for Florida right now. And I know that UCF is not Texas or any of the better teams that Florida has to play on the schedule, but what makes this game must win for the Gators is that you already got embarrassed at home in week 1 when the Miami Hurricanes and Cam Ward ran into the Swamp, took over the Swamp, and left out with the blowout win. You can't afford to go 0-2 against two of the biggest programs in the state of Florida. That would be devastating for recruiting if Florida loses to UCF, because that shows recruits that your program is not heading in the right direction. If anything, UCF is the program that now is on the up and up. And Gus Malzahn has done a really good job of helping elevate UCF football to that next level. They no longer, to me, are a team that you just look at and you say, yeah, they're a G5 school. No, this is a Power 4 program now. They're in the Big 12, and they've been acting like they're a Power 4 program. They've been elevating their facilities. Their recruiting has improved. They had a top 25 recruiting class that last year. Last year was the highest rated recruiting class that UCF has ever had. So in terms of UCF's facilities compared to Florida's facilities, like, they're catching up. And if Florida loses this game, you will see a big power shift in the state of Florida when it comes to the hierarchy of the big Power 4 programs in the Sunshine State. Right now, Miami's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, those spots are up for grabs. But if UCF wins this game, they're guaranteed to finish as the second best team in the state of Florida this year. And Florida, they still got to play Florida State this year. And if you're the Florida Gators front office, you're their athletic director, if you lose this game, you can't risk allowing Billy Napier to coach against Florida State. Because if he coaches in that game and you lose to Florida State, you will be 0-3 against 3 of the biggest programs in this state. You would lose the Florida Gauntlet. You will lose a lot of respect that your football program has in the eyes of the media, the public, and recruits. Because why would anybody want to play for Florida when you went 0-3 in the Florida Gauntlet against 3 of the biggest programs in this state? You know, Billy Napier has to win this game. There is no way that Florida can lose this game and Billy Napier not get fired as soon as the final whistle gets blown. This is a game that has serious implications, not just for Billy Napier's future, but for the prestige, the respect, and the reputation that comes with putting on that Florida Gators uniform. When somebody asks you about the Florida Gators, the first thing that probably comes in the front of your head is Tim Tebow, Urban Meyer, and national championships. But as of late, this program has been on the decline. And for UCF, they don't have as much pressure to win this game as what you do. UCF can lose this game and their reputation be perfectly fine because they're not expected to really win this game. They're a 3-point favorite, But most people expect for Florida to be able to handle themselves because although UCF is starting to rank up, they're starting to level up their football program, the Gators still have a better roster and they're playing at home. And if UCF can win this game in a tough environment that is the Swamp, you can use that as a building block if you're Gus Malzahn to sell recruits to come play for your program. And this is one of those games that possibly could have major implications on Florida's current recruiting class. UCF isn't too far away from Gainesville, Florida. It's probably like a 2-3 hour drive. So those recruits that are committed to Florida, if UCF wins this game, Gus Malzahn can phone those boys up and say, hey, man, like, well, why you wasting your time staying committed to that trash that is UF, man? We just beat those boys. They 0-2 in the Swamp. They allowed 2 teams in the state to come into their trap and take over your trap. Do you really want to play for that? Or do you want to come on and play for UCF, a program that obviously may have ranked up and leveled up from where Florida is right now? Like, this is a gigantic game for Gus Malzahn if he can seize this opportunity. It doesn't matter how down Florida football is and how bad this team may be. This is a signature win for Gus and that football program, because this win shows that if you're able to be a low-level SEC school, it shows that the power dynamic now has shifted. You no longer are afterthought. People got to respect you now. Most people still put that Group of 5 label on you. They don't know just how good you are at this level. And you got to show them, if you can take care of one of the worst teams in the SEC, it will legitimize you as a team that actually has a bright future when it comes to where this football program could be headed under Gus Malzahn within the next 2-3 years. You know, UCF doesn't have anything to lose, but they got a lot to gain with this win. Meanwhile, for Florida, you don't gain much if you win this game. If you win this game, you were expected to, because you're playing at home and you got a better roster than what UCF has. You've out-recruited them, and you got a pretty good roster. But what has held Florida back is the lack of good coaching that these players have received from Billy Napier and that staff. Guys are not being developed. Guys are not knowing their assignments. They're blowing coverages. Although Florida has the talent advantage, UCF has the coaching advantage in this game. I trust the Gus Bus more than I trust Sunbelt Billy. One thing about Gus Malzahn is that at least you know he can get you to a bowl game. Can't say the same for Billy Napier. And if Florida finds a way to win this game, I believe it buys Billy Napier a little bit of time. He may have maybe 2-3 more losses left before Florida pulls the plug, but you got to win this game, because if you can't beat the biggest teams that are in your state, it's detrimental to not just this program's reputation, but your reputation as a head coach, that you allow Florida to sink to this level. When Billy Napier was first hired by Florida, he was thought to be a program builder. Well, all this program has done under Sunbelt Billy is continue to further and further decline under him. Florida football is damn near about to become what Nebraska football has been over this last decade. Irrelevant. You got to reminisce on the Tebow days. You got to reminisce on the Steve Spurrier days. You know, like, this game has large and major implications in terms of if Florida is able to win or lose this, when it comes to Billy Napier's job security and when it comes to the respect and the reputation that is the Florida Gators football program. You can say that the Florida brand is already dying out, but a loss to UCF at home would be the nail in the coffin for Florida football. You can't go 0-2 at home in the Swamp, one of the best environments in college football, by the way, to allow 2 teams in this state to beat you on your home turf, on your home field, in front of your home fans. You can't tell me that wouldn't be devastating for Florida football if they are to lose this game. There are major implications with this game that not a lot of people in the media are talking about. Like, this game deserves that 7:30 p.m. primetime spot on ABC. Bump Tennessee and Arkansas. This is the game that everybody needs to be tuned into because there are major implications with this game. Major. Now, while we're on this subject, Tennessee is coming off their bye to go on the road and redo that over. Tennessee versus Arkansas. This is a really interesting game for several reasons, right? Tennessee's coming off a bye, and most Tennessee fans feel like they are one of the elite teams in college football this year. You went on the road, got a big win against the Oklahoma Sooners in Norman. You shut down their offense. You were lights out on defense. And now you come off a bye week going into hostile territory that is playing in Fayetteville, Arkansas. You know, those Arkansas Razorback fans, they're really passionate about this team. I still wake up every day in disbelief that there's a lot of people in the state of Arkansas that just love to watch Razorbacks football because this home crowd, they show up and they're really loud and they're really noisy. And Tennessee's a 13.5 point favorite going into this game according to Vegas. If Tennessee is the elite team that most people believe them to be, they need to come into this game and need to absolutely obliterate Arkansas. And I believe that this game has a large chance of being a blowout. However, one thing about Arkansas is that this team is a lot better than what I expected and what many of the experts expected coming into this year. Most of us thought that this was going to be arguably the worst team in the SEC along with Vanderbilt and Florida, but they've been pretty fun to watch. This is a pretty solid squad. You know, you got a really fun quarterback in Taylor Green, great arm, insane athlete. You got some nice receivers. You got a really good group of running backs. But the main problem with Arkansas is that they always find a way to kick themselves in the foot. They have like 2 turnovers a game. They're one of the worst teams in all of college football in taking care of the ball. And when you're going up against a team like Tennessee, you can't afford to have any mistakes. If anything, you got to be a team that can force mistakes from Tennessee, and you have to take advantage of them. Because one thing about Arkansas is that as fun as what their offense is to watch, you know, their fatal flaw is that they just can't get out of their own way. You know, like with the turnovers and penalties that you have, your offensive line is really inconsistent. You're going to have to play your best game, all right? Not just offensively, but defensively as well. Because one thing about Tennessee that everybody knows is that this is one of the scariest offenses in college football. They can beat you on the ground. They can murder you through the air with Nico Imaviava. I love this dude, and I probably will never get his name right because I just can't pronunciate it, but I'm a big fan of Nico. He's like Trevor Lawrence, but way more athletic and has a way more dynamic arm. He has a star-studded group of wide receivers. Tennessee has one of the deepest wide receiving cores in all of college football. And you're going up against an Arkansas secondary that has struggled this year to stop the pass. And their pass rush, outside of Landon Jackson, is much to be desired. And Tennessee defensively, going up against a really potent Arkansas offense, you know, this is going to be a big test for them. We know how good Oklahoma's offense was supposed to be, but Arkansas's offense, you can make the argument that they're better than what you saw in Norman. But you're third in America in points per game allowed. You're only allowing 8 points per game. That's insanity. You're number 1 in yards per game allowed. You're second against the run. You're third against the pass. And you're 16th in FBS and forced turnovers. You got a lot of depth and talent on that defensive line. James Pierce Jr. is going to be in the conversation to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft. Arkansas has to play their A game. But what Arkansas does have in their back pocket is that home field advantage. And if you know anything about playing in the SEC. You know how hard it is to win these games on the road. No matter how big of a talent gap there is, you can never underestimate any opponent when you got to go into enemy territory. We saw LSU almost lose to South Carolina. We saw Kentucky damn near beat Georgia. We saw Georgia get flustered in the first half against Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. Playing on the road in the SEC is a really difficult task. And this could very well be a trap game for Tennessee. However, I love the Vols to win, and I like them to cover that minus 13.5. I'm taking Tennessee to beat Arkansas. 38-17 is my final score prediction. I believe that the firepower that Tennessee has offensively is going to be way too much for that Arkansas secondary that has struggled this year. And unless Arkansas can play mistake-free football, which is something that they've been unable to do this year, I really can't see them pulling off this upset. Unless, Taylor Green has the game of his life, the offensive line is able to hold up front against that Tennessee front seven, and that home field advantage is just such a big factor that it rattles Nico. But that's the only way I can see Arkansas making this a close game. I'll be really shocked if Tennessee doesn't annihilate the Razorbacks. Another game I want to talk about, Missouri versus Texas A&M. This is a big test for Mizzou because coming into this season, a large amount of you guys believe that this team not only could make it into the new 12-team college football playoffs, but they also potentially could be playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the SEC title in December. Well, this is going to be the game that defines just how good Mizzou is. Were they overhyped coming into this season, or is this team as good as what they were hyped up to be? Because we've already seen Florida State get exposed for being a massive fraud. Is Mizzou going to be next in line? A&M, Vegas is laying 2 points on them to win this game. This is going to be one of those games for Missouri where you got to come out and show people just how good you are. And offensively, you return pretty much everybody on that side of football outside of your running back from last year and Cody Schrader. But you got another running back that's been going off this year. You also are one of the best rushing teams in America. You're 15th in college football in rushing yards per game. But you're going up against a A&M defense that is really stout on their front seven. They got a really good defensive line. They got really good linebacker play as well. And if Missouri can't get that run game going, which there's a really good shot that happens, Texas A&M is 28th in the nation at stopping the run. If you have to rely on Brady Cook to win you this game, you're going to lose. Brady Cook is one of those quarterbacks that when you look at the stats, he looks great, but when you actually watch him play, he's not as good as what the box score may indicate. And he's not a bad quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. And when Missouri gets put in situations where he has to carry them to wins, they oftentimes struggle. Now, they do have a good group of wide receivers. Texas A&M secondary is kind of struggling. They're not as good as what I thought they were going to be coming into this year. So if Brady Cook can take care of the football, he has an efficient game, Missouri should win. But realistically, I expect this to be a dogfight because Mike Elko, he's searching for his first statement win at Texas A&M. You lost at home in week 1 to Notre Dame, and you're looking to get one of those wins that you can say is a signature victory, as people call it, for Mike Elko. And beating Missouri that has all this momentum, they got a lot of playoff expectations, would change how people view the Aggies moving forward this year, because Texas A&M, like Missouri, is just as talented and has a good enough roster to make it into the playoffs as well if everything goes right for them. And this is going to be a game that is going to be a playoff eliminator for A&M, because if A&M can't win against Missouri at home, most likely you're going to be in store for a 7-8 win season, which obviously isn't going to be good enough to get you into the dance. And elite teams have to be able to defend home territory. Losing to Notre Dame is one thing. Notre Dame just may be a playoff team despite them losing to NIU, but you can't drop another home game to Missouri. Missouri defensively is where I have a lot of question marks at. We know offensively they're capable, but defensively, they haven't really been tested until these last couple of weeks where they played against Boston College. They won that game by one possession. They nearly lost to Vanderbilt in overtime. Drew Pavia had his way on that Mizzou defense, and they lost their defensive coordinator to LSU, and they also lost a good amount of experience from that side of the football last year. So this is going to be a test to show just how good Missouri's defense is, because Texas A&M, they're a pretty well-balanced offense. Ever since they made the quarterback switch to Marcel Reed, the true freshman QB, well, not the true freshman, but the redshirt freshman quarterback, this offense has been pretty good. You know, they're not going to light up the scoreboard when it comes to their passing offense. They're going to take what the defense gives them, and Marcel Reed, he still is kind of struggling with his accuracy. He's completing only 54% of his passes, but he makes good decisions with the football, doesn't have an interception, and he's really dynamic utilizing his legs. So with how good Marcel Reed has been for A&M, and with how good those running backs are, you're 22nd in the nation in rushing yards per game, you're going to show just how good Missouri's defense is, because this is a defense that kind of has shown a lot of signs of weakness these last couple of weeks. Now, the team that I'm going to pick to win this game, I'm taking Texas A&M to get the upset, even though it really isn't an upset because A&M is favored to win, but Missouri is the higher-ranked team, and a lot of people still have high expectations for the Tigers based off what they did last year, and that's why when Texas A&M wins this game, they're going to expose why people were overrating Missouri, because the biggest reason why Missouri's overrated is because people have judged and made their expectations for this team based off what they did in 2023, which is the best season that this program has had in the history of this program, damn near. And when you're coming off a season that great and you don't recruit at a certain level, it's fair to expect you to come back down to earth just a tad bit. I'm not saying Missouri's going to be a 7-8 win team. They very well can win 9 games, but they aren't this team that people think can take the SEC by storm. Everybody is such in a rush to see some new faces win this conference that people just hate to continue to keep picking the same teams, Alabama, Georgia, every single year to win it. That's why so many people are excited about the capability that Mizzou has this season. But with what this team lost defensively, with the experience and losing their defensive coordinator, I believe that's going to be a major reason why Missouri underachieves relative to the expectations that people have for them coming into this season. Texas A&M is going to expose a lot of those losses that they had to deal with on that defensive side of the football. And if they can slow down the run game, which I expect them to do, they force this to be a one-dimensional team where Brady Cook has to win Mizzou the game with his arm. As good as what Luther Burden is, Brady Cook, I don't see him playing efficient enough to be able to will Missouri to a victory, especially with how difficult it is to win on the road in College Station. So give me A&M to win. 24-20 is my final score prediction in this game. Now, I got one more thing I want to talk about before we head up on out of here. Miami got a really heart-wrenching win over Virginia Tech. You can say that the boys in the Men in Black, they lost Virginia Tech that game, but whatever your reasoning is to justify that performance against Virginia Tech, it doesn't matter. Miami still is undefeated, and right now, the Canes look like the clear front runner to win the ACC title this year. However, ever since Clemson got dog-walked week 1 by Georgia, they've been on an absolute tear. They've been blowing out everybody, and Clemson is starting to look like a major thorn in the side to Miami truly being back this year. But even though Clemson looks like they're bouncing back to the program they used to be prior to these last couple of down years, I still don't view them as a major threat to Miami's chances of winning the ACC. If Miami was to play Clemson today, I love the Canes to win by at least 10 points. And why I have a lot of confidence saying that is because the difference between this year's Miami's teams and the past Hurricane squads that we've seen constantly underachieve every single year is that Miami has a superstar quarterback. That being Cam Ward. Cam Ward has single-handedly resurrected Miami football. He has everybody talking about the Canes again. He has everybody still in the celebration. It's funny how anytime Miami comes up with something, everybody has to jack it. I remember they came up with the turnover chain a few years ago, and a few games into that same season, everybody had their own version of the turnover chain. Turnover pads, turnover helmets. Like, Miami just sets trends in college football. Cam Ward means everything to Miami. And with how good he's been playing, looking like a Heisman finalist, K. Klubnik isn't going to be able to give Clemson good enough quarterback play to top Miami. Miami has a good defense, a really good pass rush, a pretty good secondary, just like Clemson does. But the difference between these two teams is that Miami has just a tad bit more talent on offense. They got a better group of wide receivers. They got a better offensive line. They got a better running back in Damian Martinez. I love me some Phil Maffa, but Damian Martinez is a different beast. And Cam Ward clears Kate Klubnik. And we've seen in the past that if you have a transcendent level quarterback like what Cam Ward is, you set yourself up for seasons like this. Cam Ward to Miami football is what Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence were to Clemson when they bursted on into the national championship picture. This is the kind of quarterback and Cam Ward that Miami has that can turn around the trajectory of a program. Miami's been down and out for years, in the same tier as what Nebraska has been, dead and irrelevant. People only reminisce about the glory days. Well, now Cam Ward is about to bring some new glory days to be happy for if you're a Canes fan with how good he's been balling. You know, I don't trust Mario Cristobal. You know, I have my reservations about him as a coach, but for just this season, I trust Miami because I trust Cam Ward. Cam Ward, no matter how dire the situation gets in certain games, you can never count out the Canes along with him being the starting quarterback. He has changed this program tremendously. He has brought swagger to the U, and he makes watching Miami football actually watchable again. You know, I've had a hard time watching this team over my lifetime being a fan of this squad. I'm 22 years old. I first became a Miami fan when I was 10 during the start of the Al Golden era. So I've been through a lot of downs with Miami. The best season that I've ever seen this team have, me being alive, was 2017 when they went and got embarrassed by Wisconsin in the Orange Bowl. That was it. Cam Ward right now is giving me my best memories as a Hurricanes fan. This dude is going to be a future franchise quarterback at the next level. Can't say the same for Kate Klubnik. You know, Clemson has a really good offensive coordinator in Garrett Riley, but Miami has a really good defensive coordinator. They're really good up front, and Kate Klubnik always struggles in big games. He struggled against Georgia, and anytime Kate Klubnik goes up against a team ranked inside the top 25, he always comes up small. Cam Ward is one of those players that does complete opposite. In the biggest moments, he plays his best football. Cam Ward, this is the truth. If Clemson would have had Cam Ward when they played Georgia, maybe they don't get blown out. Cam Ward just has a different aura about him that it makes it hard to count out Miami this year. And as good as what Clemson looks like right now, Miami, I love their chances to win the ACC this year because Cam Ward just changes so much about this program when he's on the field. This is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content, when we go live. If you're listening on X, retweet, follow if you haven't already. Give us a 5-star review. You can find this episode and all of our previous ones on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Wherever you get your podcast from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. Now, before I log off, if you guys want me to open up the phone lines, I need you guys to type open up the phone lines in the comment section. If I get about 5 or 6 of you guys that want to open up the phone lines, I'll open up the phone lines. We can talk about this DeVante Adams situation and everything else that we discussed today, but that's only if we get about 5 people that say open the phone lines up in the comment section. So I'm going to give y'all a minute to let me know what y'all want. If y'all want me to take some phone calls, comment it down below. If not, I'll end up just leaving up on out of here. So if you want the phone lines to open up, I need 5 comments to say open the phone lines up within the span of the next minute. Because it's just like I don't want to open the phone lines up and I'm out talking to myself. You feel me? So I'm going to give it a minute. If you guys want me to open the phone lines up, comment open the phone lines down in the comment section down below. If not, we'll end up just logging off and calling it a day. We got 100 people tuned in on YouTube and X combined. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in, everybody that's watching. Follow us on Instagram at JT Sports _ and on X at JT Sports __. And it looks like nobody wants to open the phone lines up, so I guess we're going to call it a show for tonight. I will see you guys shortly with another episode of JT